This portion of Discovery is sponsored in part by Apple, makers of the Macintosh personal computer.
Argentina invades a small British territory off its coast. The British fleet responds.
Almost every day aboard the warships there were exercises and drills and rehearsals.
When they arrive, stunning attacks from the air.
An almighty explosion sang Carter's water. And we then all realized, my God, Adelaide had blown up.
When the ship exploded, it was like daylight for a second.
A sea and land battle rages on the remote island for 74 days. Finally,
I have just heard that the white flag is flying over Stanley. Ready?
I'm Tom Jarrell, an eyewitness account of the fury of a hidden war, when Moments of Courage continues.
This portion of the Discovery Channel is sponsored in part by Just for Men hair coloring.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
You are about to witness a revolution in high-performance technology. Its handling will astound you. Its power will take your breath away. But what makes this technology so revolutionary is what it runs on. Your imagination. Introducing Macintosh Quadra, the most powerful Macintosh ever.
On the next Discovery Sunday, is it really possible to see into the future, to read minds, to transmit thoughts? Watch the show, Psychic Powers. Then, you're caught in a flash flood. What do? A tornado heads for your children's school. Where do you go? Watch The Next Disaster. Are you prepared? Sunday, beginning at 9 Eastern, only on Discovery Sunday.
it was a place most of us, frankly, had never heard of. The Falkland Islands, a small British territory off the coast of Argentina. For years, Argentina had claimed these almost barren islands. The British said no. Then on April 2nd, 1982, Argentina, plagued by a crumbling economy and domestic discontent, decided it needed something to distract its people, a war over the Falklands. Unlike other wars in the television age, both sides kept journalists far away. It was not until the pictures you're about to see became available that we knew about the moments of courage in a remote island war. The task force was the most powerful Britain had ever put to sea, and the country would give it a royal send-off. 27,000 men and an armada of more than 100 ships, including both the Royal Navy's aircraft carriers, the Hermes and the Invincible, and 2 luxury liners, the Canberra and the QE-2, both of which were requisitioned for the war effort. It was Operation Corporate, code name for the retaking of the Falklands. And the departure of the task force evoked memories of a much larger war 40 years earlier. This was the start of an old-fashioned war, a colonial war to be fought 8,000 miles from the shores of Great Britain, on an island that many Brits had never even heard of before. On the Falklands, Argentine television showed a massive airlift taking place. The military was working around the clock, stockpiling the island with supplies and weapons and Argentine soldiers. To try and stop the Argentine buildup, Britain declared a 200-mile exclusion zone around the Falklands. But until the task force arrived to enforce it, it had little effect. The trip south lasted 4 weeks, often through stormy seas. It was a time to toughen the men up, to get them war ready.
About a week out, the captain said that he thought it was time to give the men a chance to relax and cool off after all the hard work.
Come on!
And so he had a sports day in which they had a hamburger stall up on the deck, and deck football and deck cricket and deck hockey.
The British still did not believe they were really going to war. But all of that changed 4 weeks out to sea. Day 30, Saturday, May 1st. The task force had reached the 200-mile exclusion zone and now was ready to launch an airstrike that would be coordinated with an attack by a Vulcan bomber flying all the way from Ascension Island, 3,500 miles away. A squadron of these Sea Harrier jets would soon follow. Their target, the airport in the capital city of Stanley. Their mission was to destroy the runway, to cut off the Argentine air supply line. But the mission failed. When it was all over, the runway was still intact. The following day, the task force struck again, this time at sea, when a British submarine torpedoed Argentina's only cruiser, the General Belgrano, outside the 200-mile exclusion zone. The huge ship sank quickly, and 321 men drowned. After that, the Argentine Navy pulled out of the war completely. And 2 days later, it was her Air Force that struck back.
HMS Sheffield was attacked and hit late this afternoon by an Argentine missile.
And all during the afternoon, there was a constant series of men being brought back. I think there were 24 casualties, of which 4 had very serious injuries. I think another 20 men died. And they were being ferried back on the helicopter, and they were coming off with their bandages trailing, and they looked distraught. I mean, what showed in their face was astonishment. And I think everybody, including those who hadn't been hit, shared that astonishment that a modern ship hit by a single missile could just go. Finished.
Finally, day 50, May the 21st, D-Day, when the British landed on the Falklands. It was a successful landing made possible by this book, a simple sketchbook put together by this man, a British adventurer, Major Ewing Southby-Taylor. Southby-Taylor recommended that the fleet land clear across the island 60 miles away from Stanley, here on the beaches of San Carlos Bay. He himself navigated as the first camouflage landing craft came ashore.
The landing craft are unarmed, unprotected, and apart from one frigate, largely unescorted for this final but absolutely crucial bit. I was scared that I'd got it wrong, and that somehow the beaches weren't as I'd remembered them, or when I was writing this, I'd missed out something.
By the next morning, I had all my commandos and battalions ashore, I had all my guns ashore, and I had my rapier battery ashore, and I was beginning to get my stores ashore, so I had over 3,000 men ashore.
The British established a firm beachhead, unopposed. But when the Argentine Air Force realized where the British had landed, they began 4 intense days of counterattacks. San Carlos Bay would be nicknamed Bomb Alley.
It was right in the alleyway that the Argentinian aircraft were coming down to hit the ships in San Carlos water. And we had the sort of bird's eye view. We could see them coming in, and we could see the bombs dropping, and the Argentinian planes being shot down. It was, you know, a ball of fire, and it was all over.
In just 4 days, 40 Argentine aircraft were shot out of the sky over San Carlos Bay.
There's an air battle going on to the north.
But despite heavy losses, a steady stream of jets kept coming. They crippled much of the British fleet there. HMS Antelope took 2 bombs in her midsection that failed to explode until later that night.
There was an almighty explosion from San Carlos water, and we then all realized, my God, the Antelope was blown up.
When the ship exploded, it was like daylight for a second. We could see helicopters coming in close to try and fan the smoke away, and all the landing craft getting the men off. And there were more and more explosions through the night.
The next morning, of course, it was still burning, and then it sank very dramatically. It suddenly broke its back.
We were really badly mauled. You know, we lost 6 ships by air attacks. And if all the bombs that had hit ships had gone off, we'd have lost another 6 ships, and the war would have been over for us, I reckon.
Not even the British field hospital was spared the attack. It was set up inside this empty refrigeration plant.
When the building was attacked, we then had to deal with the casualties from this attack. And every time an air raid alert sounded, non-essential staff went out and patients on trestles were lowered to the floor, but the surgeons carried on cutting.
I'd love to meet Alan Alda and tell him just how true to life his series was. I'm sad it's finished. The English MASH was very like the 4077th.
It seemed inconceivable that Argentina could be winning the war. The big ships seemed like sitting ducks for the Argentine Air Force, even though they were flying old and relatively unsophisticated fighters. We'll find out how the British turned the tide when we come back.
More valuable than most, this umbrella. Those who carry the Travelers for business insurance carry a 127-year tradition of excellence, upheld by 35,000 employees dedicated to customer satisfaction, chosen by 50% of the Fortune 500. Open in case you want quality and service the Traveler's way. You're better off under the umbrella.
Norelco doesn't just shave you close, but incredibly close, or merely shave you in comfort, but in exceptional comfort. Because the Norelco razor's patented lift and cut system lifts the hair, so when it's cut, it can actually drop below skin level without the blades even touching your face. And once you've shaved that incredibly close with exceptional comfort, you know you'll always be comfortable shaving with a Norelco. Norelco, we make close comfortable.
Coming up now. I'll call you.
Really working that phone?
No kidding.
Are you, global?
My business, only way to play the game.
Well, here's something that might help.
Oh, really? Wow.
Okay, first you got AT&T Pro Watts and savings on calls to 177 direct dial countries.
Yeah, it's great. So?
So, your most important business calls are probably to just one country. Tell us which one, and you'll save an extra 10% on those calls. It's the favorite nation option.
Wait, I tell you Italy, and I get an extra 10% off?
Give us the word.
Japan.
You tell us where you want to save the most.
How about the UK next month? Or Mexico?
You can change your favorite nation up to twice a month. You control the savings.
I like control.
Great. Then call us.
I will. Canada.
Call 1-800-441-5735.
Let's go back to 1982. The Falklands War has been raging for almost 2 months now. British forces have taken heavy losses from the constant bombardment by the Argentine Air Force. The Argentine Navy and Air Force have also sustained heavy casualties themselves. Now the British are going to try to fight their way on the ground, but they face some heavy resistance.
No more opening fire. No more opening fire.
Day 56, Thursday, May 27th. British troops began a 2-week, 60-mile push on foot across the island to the capital of Stanley. Their first target, to retake the settlement of Goose Green, where Argentine troops were holding the local residents hostage inside the village hall.
My CO was dead. The adjutant who knew all about the personnel of the battalion was dead, and things looked a bit black. And I have to say that I didn't pull out my manual. I prayed. I sat down in a bit of gorse and I prayed.
What happened next at this remote, charred battlefield was the bloodiest fight of the war. Chris Keeble's battalion of British paratroopers launched an attack that was so violent, so aggressive, the 1,400 Argentine troops at Goose Green finally surrendered.
He got his battalion's attack going again, and the boys did a tremendous job. I mean, they just put their heads down and went and kept going.
The battle was won and lost because their will broke. The whole point about violence is that you generate it on the battlefield in order to break the will of the enemy. If you can't break the will by violence, then he ain't ever going to surrender. We broke their will.
18 British paratroopers and 250 Argentine soldiers were killed during the 14-hour battle. Now the British had more than 1,000 prisoners, and a local sheep-shearing pen was transformed into a makeshift prisoner-of-war camp. The tiny settlement, which had been turned into a fortress, was liberated.
After 30 days of being locked up there in the village hall, the people of Goose Green were once again free, and they were glad to be back under British rule.
The next objective was 35 miles east toward Stanley, the retaking of 2 settlements, Fitzroy and Bluff Cove.
What we've got to do is to get...
Brigadier Tony Wilson organized an unusual helicopter reconnaissance mission.
He got one of his men to telephone one of the settlements right up along the coast, Fitzroy. Not thinking that anyone would answer, or not even thinking the telephones would work.
Well, the heliborne force went off and incredibly found a telephone, picked up the telephone, dialed Fitzroy, as it were, and Bluff Cove, got through, and somebody answered.
Well, they just said it was the British Army.
Fitzroy and Bluff Cove were used as staging areas. The plan was to bring as many men as possible up to the front line in position for the final assault on Stanley, which was now just 1 week away. Day 68, Tuesday, June 8th. By this time, 10 days had passed without an Argentine air attack, and the British Guard was down. The stage was set for Britain's worst disaster of the war. 2 ships, led by the huge landing ship Sir Galahad, carrying 240 Welsh guardsmen, entered Fitzroy Bay, unprotected in daylight.
With no air cover whatsoever, the Galahad was a sitting duck. She was anchored in these waters when the first wave of Argentine aircraft appeared from over the hills.
We came out just in time to see, I think, the second series of planes disappear over the top of the hill. And we ran up to the top of the hill where we could see down into the bay. And there was one ship already burning brightly. That was Galahad, with thick black smoke coming out, ammunition exploding. And there were helicopters queuing up to lift the men out of the smoke. And some of the life rafts were just floating back towards the ship, which was, at that stage, an inferno.
All afternoon, lifeboats, many filled with badly wounded Welsh guardsmen, headed in toward shore.
There were gangs of men pulling the boats in, lifting people out and carrying them ashore.
We need 2 stretchers urgently. Quick, get the shore.
Amateurs were shoving morphine needles into people's arms, not even into their veins, just, you know, the first bit of skin they saw, they shoved morphine in. Because everyone was taken by surprise, and there were the medics were back at the field hospital.
The British had blundered badly here at Bluff Cove, and it had cost them 51 lives. Now they wanted to get the war over as quickly as possible, and that meant taking those mountains that surround Stanley.
And the key mountain features were Mount Longdon, Two Sisters, and Mount Harriet. And my intention was to secure all those 3 features in a night brigade attack. We had quite a lot of gunfire support, and we had naval gunfire in support as well.
As soon as we got the command to move, the Argentinians opened up, and there was a couple of casualties on the start line before we moved. Again, that really put the mockers on everybody. They thought, we're never going to get out of this. And then we started to move forward. Once we got halfway up the mountain, the terrain changed, and there was a lot of rocks, rocky outcrops, so we could move from rock to rock. in good cover. However, they started opening up with artillery again.
Despite heavy Argentinian artillery fire, the British held their mountain positions. For the final assault, the British brought forward more than enough men and strong artillery support. After just 4 days of fighting, the Argentine army retreated from the mountains into Stanley, now clearly visible to the British troops for the very first time. Finally, Monday morning, June 14th, a long-awaited message was radioed to all troops.
Gentlemen, I have just heard that the white flag is flying over Stanley. Ready?
All I do know is that the shooting has stopped. We've overrun their main gun positions, and they have taken themselves to the other end of town. I think inevitably we had a lot of luck. I think one always has luck on these occasions. I think things went wrong occasionally, but things always go wrong in war. But less things went wrong than they might have done, and less people were killed than might have been killed.
We missed them. Everybody who was lost was missed. The next day, we went into Stanley Cathedral, the entire battalion, and thank God that we were alive. And we prayed for those people we lost, including the enemy.
Close to 1,000 men had been killed, 712 Argentinian troops and 255 British. Now 12,000 prisoners were ready to be sent home. It was the end of a 74-day war. The Falkland Islands were once again British soil. The war was over with a heavy toll, and the ripples of that war are still felt today. 8 years after all the bloodshed, death, and destruction, the Falklands remained unchanged, except there were almost as many British soldiers there as Falklands residents. The BBC's Brian Hanrahan, who covered the war, has returned there since, and he still has trouble making sense of why it was fought.
I think it was a profoundly depressing time to look back on, to realize that sense had failed and that a resort to armed force had to be used, and that people had died as a result of it, when the whole thing should have been settled by logic and could probably have been settled by a rational argument, even if it was an argument that says, if this goes on, people will get killed and you'll get hurt. I just found that very sad.
For many of the Argentine soldiers, the aftermath of the war was a bitter time. Many were disillusioned with their country, and a war they felt didn't have to be fought.
I'm not ashamed of saying I was a victim of a process of a group of people that controlled my country. I think in one way or another we were all victims of some type of humiliation.
In Argentina, news of the surrender set off a powder keg of discontent with the military rulers who had led the country into war.
La Constitución Nacional.
Sí, juro. In 1983, those generals were replaced with a democratically elected government. Among its first tasks, criminal trials for those who started the war. When we come back, the lessons that the world learned from this faraway war.
Brought to you in part by Oldsmobile. Come see the power of intelligent engineering. Car and Driver magazine declared its road manners are in the import vein, but comfort is better. And if you're wondering what else they had to say about the new Oldsmobile 88 Royale, call 1-800-343-OLDS. We'll send you their complete test drive evaluation on video cassette, free. Because when Car and Driver says the new 88 has hit the elusive style mark, it deserves more of your time than we can give it here. Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
If you thought a really powerful business computer was way out of your reach, we've got news for you. Introducing the affordable Macintosh Classic 2. Right now, you can pick up a Macintosh Classic 2 with Apple's special financing options. For details on this introductory offer, see your authorized Apple reseller today. But you'd better hurry. They're going fast.
For 6 long years, the world was held prisoner by its own turmoil. Now, relive the saga of man's greatest conflict, World War II. Fridays at 10 Eastern, only on the Discovery Channel.
The Falklands War has had an impact on the way we fight wars and the way the press covers them. It made big navies, including the United States, realize how vulnerable they can be and how their electronic countermeasures must always be ready for a high-tech attack, even from a small air force. In 1983, when the U.S. invaded the Caribbean island of Grenada, it too tried to keep the press out, with government cameramen supplying the few pictures available. It became a flashpoint for the argument over national security versus the public's right to know. When war broke out in the Persian Gulf, the press came along, but was organized into pools to cover the battle. The press could only get their story out under government supervision. And the debate over press freedom versus the pressures of the battlefield will continue. That's our program. I'm Tom Gerald. Join us again for more behind-the-scenes stories and real-life drama on Moments of Courage.
Tomorrow night, with the Third Reich teetering on the brink of collapse, it took Allied air power to push it over the edge. Join us for Hunters in the Sky at 8 Eastern. But now, Wildlife Tales. Next.
In Celebration of Trees, premiering Monday, December 16th.
More dependable than most, this umbrella. For it comes from the Travelers and its independent agents. Your partners in insurance protection you can carry with confidence. From life insurance for individuals to property, casualty, and health insurance for owners of businesses large and small. Open in case you want the team that delivers. The Travelers and its independent agents. You're better off under the umbrella.
Thursdays, it's plane against plane, pilot against pilot, as the great air battles of World War II are recreated through rare footage and exclusive interviews with the pilots who dueled above the clouds on Hunters in the Sky. Then, the soldiers of World War II tell their story, vividly relating wartime memories of major campaigns, first-hand accounts of the victories and the defeats, straight from the front lines on GI Diary. Then, see the technical developments taking place today that will change the way you live tomorrow. Don't let the world pass you by. Keep up with the fast-paced science magazine that takes you into the 21st century, Beyond 2000. Then,
hi, I'm Susan Hunt. Celebrate our country's lifestyles and landscapes, cultures and pastimes. Join me as we travel America coast to coast.
Hunters in the Sky, GI Diary, Beyond 2000, and America Coast to Coast. Thursdays beginning at 8 Eastern only on the Discovery Channel.